If somebody were to ask me, why would I buy the Natura issues for me? You know what I would say? Simple, man. These stories are about people. And at the root of it, that's what all stories are about. People. And that's why we appreciate anybody that takes the time to come pick up a book from us. And I hope you enjoy them. Thanks.
We are live. Welcome to Coffee, Chix Comix, our weekly podcast. Well, we're at least going to try and be more weekly with you. I am your host, Nisha Mars, and I am here with my co-host, Jesse Guys. Say hello, Jesse.
Hello, everybody.
So we have a special edition today. Today we are going to be talking about comic book relationships, and we have our special guest star here with us today. I would call him our relationship guru, and most of you guys know him from his own YouTube show, Sealz the Man. So without further ado, here is Denzel Sealz.
Hey.
Good afternoon, sir.
How you doing?
Good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here today, taking time out of your busy schedule from your podcast to be on ours. So this is our first episode of our Flip the Tables edition, where we're going to be sitting down with different podcasters all across the board, just talking about different topics. And so we wanted to do it for Valentine's Day, but it's a little bit after the fact. But, you know, Valentine's Day in most relationships lasts 365 days out of the year.
Right.
So we want to talk about some of our infamous comic book relationships and get some of your advice. But before we dive into that, let's do some background on you. So you've been doing this, I don't know, I've been watching you for about 2 years. How long have you been actually giving relationship advice or things that people should look for in a relationship?
You know, it's crazy. I don't want to let that go by. Like, that makes me feel so good. Like, I'm low-key a really humble guy. So the fact that you said you've been watching me for 2 years is like, that makes me feel like really good like that. So I thank you for sticking around with my crazy thoughts and stuff. So I started during COVID, actually. I was at home, bored. I like talking to people, helping people out. So I just started the YouTube channel 2020. And then, you know, fast forward to now, it's been doing, you know, you're here now. So I appreciate that. Also, one thing is like, it's crazy because I just want to talk about men, right? And just giving advice about men. And somehow like people turned me into like a relationship guru. And I'm just like, I'm not that. But yeah, I love talking about like the things we go through and helping other people understand us a little better. And I guess that involves a lot of relationships, right? A lot of love and stuff. So it makes sense. So, but yeah, once again, thank you for having me on your platform. I didn't know you had your own comic book. I will be supporting that after this. And yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. And once again, yeah, so I've been watching for 2 years. I started in the height of my dating extravaganza from coming out of a very long-term relationship after 5 years. Wow. And I did the online dating during COVID, and then we did the, you know, random, you know, outings and stuff. So you kind of gave me that voice. And it was kind of funny because you said you always disclose in your podcast that you wrote this for your nieces. Yeah. And that you're writing this to inspire young women when they grow up, you know, not to fall into those traps that often relationships give you. But it speaks to a lot of single women that are actually going back into that market. Right. So and that's where you kind of came in and helped me, because it was just like things that like we want to know what guys are thinking, but we really don't want to know. You kind of get that highlight without going into that great depth of like getting lost in like Narnia, so to speak. Right. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. Jess, I know you have some interview questions lined up, so I'm going to turn it on over to my
co-host. It's because it was funny enough, like I'm single right now, so it's like when Lanisha was like, "Oh, we're gonna interview this guy," I was like, "Oh, okay, what's it about? What are we doing?" And then I started watching your content, and I was like, "Okay, I have some questions. Which books did you read? Yeah. How did all this kind of unfold for you? Like, there's questions."
Oh yeah, I'm here to help. I'm here. Let it go. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's dive right in. Sealz, your biggest advice is usually that you're coming from the man's perspective. So, and now you get a lot of men that watch you too. Like I'm listening and I usually look at your comments and stuff. You get a lot of feedback from actually both sexes.
Wow.
So what is one of those major key wisdom points that you love to kind of, tell your audience?
So I always not always, but I've come to the conclusion that you have to always remain yourself, right? No matter what. And in the remaining yourself, you have to know what's for you and what's not for you, what you like and what you don't like. I see a lot of people get into these relationships because they feel like they need one, or they need a man, or they need a woman, or this person makes them feel good. Even on the back of their minds, they do not feel good, right? They're doing things to please this person. They're not pleasing themselves. They're not looking after themselves. So I always say, like, if the chemistry is right, if this person is for you truly, if you feel good around this person, if like, it doesn't matter what other people think about your relationship. If you feel good with your relationship with this person, then it's right. But if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, it's going to end the wrong way. And that's how I feel about it. If something is against my liking, if I don't like the lifestyle of this person that I'm with, I'm no longer going to be in that situation. I can't do that, right? If there's too much resistance, it's oil and water. Like, what are y'all doing together, right? So I always say, like, find what's for you. Go to the places that celebrate you. Go to the places that you like. So you find people that like similar things that you like. Don't do things or go to places or do activities that you don't even like doing, and you see that all the time. So that's one of my biggest, I would say, teachings, is to be with someone who is for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if they're not for you, don't force it. Don't force it. I've done that myself. I've been in a relationship where I was with a woman because she was like appealing. She was beautiful on the outside, right? I knew that when I was with her, everyone was going to say, "Yo, that's your girlfriend. Oh, you know her? Like, oh, that's awesome." It did not last, because at the end of the day, she was not for me, and I was doing it for like selfish reasons or thinking about what other people was thinking. It wasn't for me, right?
Yeah.
So that's my biggest tip or advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one, though. That's a really good one, because I think we all get into situations or relationships or even dating, kind of thinking, oh, okay, well, if I just stick it out long enough, then maybe we'll agree on something eventually,
right?
Or if I say this, then maybe this will be the new outcome of it, or whatever. And then a lot of us go into it with these pre-fantasy ideas of what our relationship is to look like. But really, honestly, relationships are like having kids. You kind of don't know what you're going to get, because you don't know what the personality is until you get in it.
Yeah.
So how do you draw that back? How do you say, all right, well, I look at, let's say, Superman and Lois, and you say, oh, they have a great dynamic and everything. And, but really, he's a workaholic. Like, he's not being Clark Kent and being a reporter. He's being Superman.
Right.
He's literally saving the entire world. And she's just kind of stuck reporting what he's doing constantly, which is kind of narcissistic, right? Because she's in this relationship with this guy and everything's great, but she's always either the damsel in distress sometimes, or she's the person that's reporting everything that he's doing. She has all this inside scoop because she's literally sleeping with this guy. So how do you get into what would you say about that? Like, how do you work out that dynamic where you're not the sideline person, but you're both the main component of the relationship?
It's funny you brought that concept. That's a good concept, because most of the girlfriends of superheroes usually like eventually gained a superpower or something. Like, they usually like gained an ability, like, and she really didn't. Like, she just, kind of remained, on her position. But anyway, I feel like it depends on the value the two have with each other. right? Once again, it's like it's not what we care about, what we think about their relationship. It's about like what they think about their relationship. Because I feel like Superman couldn't have been Superman without her, even though she was a basic human being like us. Like she had no abilities or anything. Like he was able to achieve different levels and upper echelons because of her. Because of her, the things she said to him when, you know, in the darkness or off screen or whatever you want to call it. I'm sure she's poured into his life that encouraged him to become more powerful and do the things that he did. So you have to be with someone who balances you, pours life into you, and makes you better. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, right? Because you see a lot of these successful relationships and you're like, how are they together? They don't even like look like they belong together. They don't look like they match. Like you hear that a lot, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's what they think. It's how they feed each other, you know, and that's something maybe the outside public will never know, the things they do together and pour into each other in private. So Lois Lane, she was that to Superman just as much as Superman was to her.
Okay. Jesse, go.
I know. I was like, it was funny because as you were talking, I was like, oh, I actually have a question and I want to write it down. Because I was like, I'm gonna forget it if I don't write it down. Yeah. What are your tips for like conflict in relationships? Because when we see, because right now with a lot of the things that we consume, like mostly I find this in comic book where when couples are together and they're having a conflict, they'd rather just not talk about the conflict at all and just kind of leave it in dead space and not talk about it again.
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't really helpful.
Right. I'll start off by like, even like bringing it to the comic book relationships. I would start off by saying like recognize what type of conflict it is. Make sure it's not a conflict that's like literally damaging you or abusing you, right? Kind of like Joker and Harley. Like, make sure you're not in that type of conflict where it's like there is no winning this. There is no solution to this. Like, I have to get out to survive type of thing, right? So make sure it's not that. If it's not that type of conflict and it's just like a regular conflict, I would say never match a man's energy, right? Never match your partner's fire, because you'll notice when you get into conflicts or arguments, the person that starts it usually is like upset about something. So they're coming at you like with, you know, that initial energy or anger or whatever. I feel like the worst thing to do is to match that. And one of the true powers that women have is that they're able to like balance men. They're able to balance our ego, able to balance our macho-ness, and they calm us down. It reminds me of the picture, speaking on comics, it reminds me of the picture, I don't know if y'all seen it, of the Incredible Hulk, and he was with his girl, and like he was in Hulk form, and he was like, you know, bent over, and she was just like touching his head, and he was like very calm. Like it was this little woman, you know, touching, like having her hand on Hulk's head, and he was just like after a long day of saving the world, you know, I come to you to like have that balance, that safe place. So in conflict, never match energy, right? And listen before you respond. It's important to think before you speak, because it is very easy to, once again, match energy and just speak the first thing that's on your mind. You have to put yourself in their shoes, right? I feel like you must put yourself in their shoes, because once you do that, then you broaden your understanding of the current situation at hand. If you're just trying to match their energy or respond quick without listening, that is a selfish thing to do, because you're trying to win the argument on your end. You're not trying to give a solution, right? So listen before you speak. And there's two methods to communication. You probably see, I always talk about my videos. There's two avenues. There's listening and speaking. People just talk about speaking and communication. That is not it. You listen. And most times you will learn so much about people if you just listen and shut up. That's how I learned so much about men and people in general. I listen, I watch, I people watch, love people watching. Super fun. And the third thing I would say is if you truly love this person in the conflict with love, right? It's really it's a sticky situation when you're in an argument or you're in a conflict and y'all talk about whatever y'all talk about, right? And it's done, right? And now it's this awkward phase where you're just like, okay, what's next? Like, so what do we do now? You know, always end it with love. If you truly love this person, give them a hug. Give them affirmations of your love towards them. Like, end it on a good note, right? It started on such a bad note. Bring some love into it, because at the end of the day, if you're in a relationship, this is about love, and you're going to have hiccups and mess ups and conflicts. But at the end of the day, you love this person. You just want to reaffirm that to your partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like
So one of my infamous relationships that my boyfriend wanted us to talk about is T'Challa and Storm. T'Challa and Storm, they had this very undercover. I want to say it was undercover because it wasn't as broadcast as like Superman and Lois or Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Right. But they had like this relationship that was like they were together, then they weren't. They were very twin flamish. Yeah. But ultimately, what broke them up is that T'Challa's pride wasn't allowing her to do what she needed necessary, deemed fit for her family.
Right.
So how do you deal with those dynamics? How do you deal with having such push and pull where you feel like you have to choose between your family and your relationship? Like, where do you find your Switzerland in that situation?
Yeah, their relationship was, man, I really loved their relationship, man, and it sucked that it separated. I heard the rumors it was because they were owned by two different companies at one, like, and then they like eventually had to separate. But if we just keep it in the comic sphere, it's really hard. Now I'm talking about understanding the mind of men. It's really hard for most men, a lot of men, to be able to be in a relationship with another boss. Mm-hmm. Storm was a boss. Like, she was like one of the most powerful women in the comic sphere, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like there was a lot of, I want to say, boss energy, but in Black Panther's mind, I feel like it was a lot of masculine energy. And maybe in his head, he was thinking like, dang, I'm fighting another me. Like, I'm fighting another head figure. And I feel like that's what they were struggling with. They had two heads of the household. Yeah. and it became a power dynamic, a power struggle. So I know a lot of men struggle with that. To be able to find a Switzerland, as you said, I feel like you have to go back to the reason y'all got together. Y'all got to go back to the reason to day one. What made you like this person? What made them like you? Mm-hmm. The little things, the little details make up the biggest grand scheme of things. It's always the little details that will keep the relationships lasting the longest, not the big things that everyone talks about or everyone invests in or everyone wants to, preach to people. It's always the little things, right? The little things like being goofy, making little jokes, making your partner laugh, or cooking a certain thing that your partner loves. It's the things that people don't see that makes relationships successful, even when there's two like very powerful heads, right? So I will always say, go back to the main thing. Like, one of my favorite sayings is like, keep the main thing, right? So once you go back, if you get rid of all the special powers and all the power they had, all the money they had, if it's just them two, just naked without anything, why do y'all love each other?
Right.
Those details are going to like be your Switzerland. That's going to bring that common bridge together and remind y'all like, okay, this is why we're together. So let's keep that in remembrance. Even when we go through our struggles, we can always come back to this thing, and that'll keep us together. So that's what I'm gonna say. Keep the main thing.
That works.
Hopefully, I'm not talking too much.
No, you're talking just enough, because like I'm taking in all this insight, and then it always makes me form another question. And that's why I don't like scripts, because I like to be able to just I like the raw of it. I like to be able to just like randomly come up with these questions and then, have some insight to them. And that gives people more organic reasons to relate to what we do out here. Yeah. I know that's something that's what I love about your podcast, because it's not scripted and you're always in different parts of your apartment. It's really crazy. I love your nighttime editions because you just turn on the light. It just be like, it may be the blue light special or the red light special. You don't know which one you're gonna get, but either way, something deep is coming out of this conversation, right? So but I honestly, this is like one of those things where you're also like, just kind of, and I think that's why the guys were kind of scared to come on today, because I actually invited, the other bosses of our comic book to come on today too. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to talk about the relationship stuff. Yeah, it'd be hitting too close to home sometimes. So,
I literally just got confronted with that what you're talking about right now. So like, I'm doing a new thing on my channel where I'm doing street interviews now, right? Mm-hmm. So you'll be seeing it soon. And I went to New York last month, right? And I'm my goal is to interview men that come by and just talk about understanding the mind of men, but I want to give y'all something like a different perspective than just mine, right? So, man, I swear to you, like half of the men I asked, like, no, I can't help you. It was like I was asking them for $1,000 or something. I was like, bro, I'm not going to ask you like anything crazy, anything personal. I'm talking man to man, like, and I swear to you, half of them were like, I don't know, I don't think so. Bro. I had one dude who was like shivering. It looked like, and his sister was like, just go ahead, talk to him. And he was like, I can't do it. And the funny thing was, like, the men who I did get, they were encouraged by their woman. So they were either walking with their woman, and a woman said, go, and then they did it. But at first they were like, no, I can't do it. And then the woman was like, no, go ahead. And they were like, oh, okay. So yeah, it just shows you the power.
We got into that conversation, and it's really funny when you're in a relationship. Men seek the permission of their women sometimes. It's really weird. And it's not a written verbal, oh, babe, can I go here kind of permission, but it's just like this unspoken, like, hey, like if they say, hey, I want to have guy time and we're going to watch a movie. Okay, that means, girl, go find something to do. Right. You could be gone for hours. Don't spend $1,000 on a credit card, but have your time. And I think that's the same thing when we're questioning things. One of the things that spoke to that would be the relationship of Peter Parker and Mary Jane. Peter Parker was this very shy, introverted, not really wanting to be a superhero, but knew he had to do something with the powers that he had, right? So, but then he also was trying to get the girl, which he never got. Like, the girl was always in any verse that you looked at Peter Parker in, she was always doing something with terrible relationships. In the movie version, she was with the Green Goblin for a minute right after high school. And, that shook his world. And then there was the one where she actually died. So it was just, so how do you deal with, it's not so much. And I think that's where guys get it confused. And I think I have this conversation with my guy a lot, especially, it's not so much submission, but it's just an open understanding that we both have permission to do certain things. How do you do that and feel like you could still save the world in your relationship by doing what you do daily? Like, whether it's doing a podcast or being a doctor or being a cop, or, how do you keep that balance of career dynamic and what you do for your daily life, and then have the permissions or speak on what you feel and be passionate about? Even as an activist, you have those backlashes from speaking up, and sometimes they're closer inside home, and sometimes they're in the same bed. Like, how do you deal with those, especially like when we're dealing with politics and stuff today?
Right. That's a good one, because Peter and MJ's like relationship was pretty crazy. I don't think it's talked about enough how complex their relationship was. They went through a lot. And like, I think one time he gave her like cancer, right? Like, because of his powers. Like, they've been through a lot. So, back to what you said, asked. I think one good thing to have in a relationship like this is for both partners to be busy, right? For both partners to be busy in their careers or whatever they're doing, because I've noticed that if one partner is doing a lot and the other partner isn't doing so much, that partner who isn't doing so much is like hawking her partner because he's not or she's not giving him or her enough time, because he's doing other things, right? So I feel like there has to be a balance of activity on both partners. And with that activity, I feel like both partners need to like at least be passionate about what they're doing, or even love what they're doing, like what they're doing. Because when they're not, when they're in dislike of what they're doing, they will bring that energy back home, and then that will create new problems. So I feel like both partners must have something going on in their own worlds, even though they're and their both worlds become one. But in their own individual worlds, they must be active and busy in their calling or whatever they're doing to give them each other space as well, to keep their minds busy because my grandma always told me this: too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So too much togetherness or too much love can also turn into a hatred or annoyance of each other, or you start arguing over petty little things, and all these things will start to creep up because you're not giving yourself enough space for your partner, enough time to miss each other. So yeah, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So I feel like activity is important, basically.
Nice. Josh, you got any more questions in your wheelhouse over there?
Do you have any books? Like, do you have any like book recommendations?
You know what's crazy, man? I hate books. I really and that sounds so ignorant, man, but I literally cannot, like, the whole physical pages thing, I just can't do it, man. So if it's not on my phone, if I can't just scroll, or if it's not a comic book, or if it doesn't have pictures on it, or if it's not Audible, I'm not.
I was just gonna say our comic books are digital, so you don't have to worry about it. We can.
But that's the thing. I like reading physical comic books.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I told you in the email, like I have tons of comics, I have stacks, right? So I don't mind the comic book, but books with just text and letters, can't do it. I need to see something. I'm a very visual person. I'm also an artist too. I draw, so I have to see something. Seeing is telling my story. Like I love seeing it. So
love that.
So yeah, all my advice is literally from experience, literally things I've been through or have seen. And another thing, I kind of don't like reading other people's perspectives because I don't want it to like change my perspective. Like I feel like I bring a different perspective because I bring my perspective. So no one else in this world can tell you what I see, right? Just like you can tell me something that I will never know because you've been through it, right? So I'll probably be the first person to tell you, like, books are just not for me. So, yeah.
All right. So what's the last comic you read?
So the last comic I read was... It's been a while. I'll have to say it was the... Oh! How could I forget? It was the Superman versus Ali. No, was it Superman versus Ali? Yeah, I think it was a Superman versus Ali subscription. And it was the one before that was the Black Panther edition that they made after Chad Boswick died.
Okay.
So I bought both editions. So they had like a monochrome cover and then one where he was just like doing this and in remembrance of Chad Boswick. So yeah, those were the two last ones, and that was like a couple years ago. I need to get back to it now.
Been out of the comic book game. We're gearing up for comic season, so there's always new comics. So
you guys have inspired, lit a fire to get back into the crates.
Let's talk about the shirt you chose today. So you picked Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, man.
What relationships and Masters of the Universe did you like? I mean, how the dynamic between He-Man and Skeletor alone was. And we were just talking about that this morning too.
Really?
Things that were happening in my own house before I even logged in today. So
yeah, wow. I feel like Skeletor is the funniest criminal in the comic universe. Yo, that guy, every time I see that guy, I start crying laughing because he's just a funny dude, bro. Like his laugh and everything is just it's amazing. But He-Man was the first old time cartoon I ever watched.
Okay.
So my grandfather used to watch those old shows back in the day, like MASH and Matlock. But then He-Man was on that same level, right? So that will always be on my TV when I was young. So I kind of just got a liking for the cartoon. I hated it at first, but then as I got a little bit older and older, I started to understand it more, and now I just love it, man. Like my favorite animal is the panther.
Okay.
So my guy on there, Panther, is like, I feel like he was a black guy, right? I think so. Him and Piccolo are undercover black guys, but no one wants to talk about it. But whatever.
Well, that's the funny thing about 80s cartoons, right? You never knew what nationality they were, what culture they came from.
Yeah.
They kind of kept it very vague about anything, and everybody was an alien. Like everybody was always this either metahuman or alien type person that was always painted purple or so it was really hard to figure out who was really behind that voice.
Yeah. It was a deep voice. It was like, come on. But I bring that up because he was the first, like, I thought black character that looked like me. Like, so that made me more attached to the cartoon as well. So and then because of He-Man, I got into other cartoons like X-Men. They just announced the X-Men 94 coming or 97 coming out, so that's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
Did you see the news where in one of the comic books someone betrays the X-Men, and so it's the end of that. It's the end of the Power of X and the House of X. Really? And they saved Moira to do it. So we don't know who the character is that saves Moira, but I have a feeling it might be Cyclops.
Oh wow, that would be that would fit. That would fit.
That be a plot, right?
Yeah, that would be the least person you expect, so it would be him. Yeah.
And that will probably bring us to our last comic book couple of this episode, and that's Cyclops and Jean Grey. Now that was a dysfunctional relationship like nobody's business. We saw a lot of back and forth. We saw entanglement with Wolverine at one point. We saw her die and then resurrect 20 different ways. And every time she came back, she had a different personality. Yeah. So what do you, and it kind of, it almost seems more, I want to say it's very Harley and Jokerish because you're talking about a person that's literally had split personalities every time she was resurrected, right? She comes back as the Phoenix. She had no emotional attachment to Cyclops at all. He moves on with his life. All of a sudden, she remembers who she was and falls back in love with him. And then he's ripped out of his world and been back into hers again. Yeah. So what do you say to relationships that are dealing with mental bipolar issues or any type of schizophrenia or those type of issues? Like, how do you handle those?
Those are on another level type complicated, right? I was once in a relationship with a woman who I feel like she had that a disorder, but it just wasn't diagnosed. But she was a different personality, like depending on the shade of the moon. Like, but I still loved her because I loved all her personalities. But at the end of the day, I knew there was something off with her. And the best thing I can say is gain education on your partner's disorder. You should not listen to people like me who have not went to school and got their doctorate and actually studied these things. Yeah. You need to actually take the time out. If you truly love this person, take the time out and learn about your partner. And in learning about your partner, you have to learn about her disadvantages, her disorders, the things that she's going through mentally. And like you was talking about, like reading books, like that will be something worthwhile to read a book on, to like actually talk to and consult with a doctor or whatever physician is in that field, because disorders are complicated. There's no one fit all answer. And the problem with Grey was that she was super powerful. So if like, come on, like Phoenix is like probably the most powerful character in the universe. So it's like, you got to be careful with that. And it kind of applies to humans, like us regular humans. It's like, And on a serious note, your partner can kill you if they are not like there, right? If they can literally switch if that disorder is that bad. And that's why I feel like it's a need to learn about your partner. That's a must, especially if you detect or recognize that there's something going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
And in learning about your partner, you get to love them better, right? You get to do things that they like. There's an advantage to learning about your partner. And I'm sure you've seen him. I've talked about my videos. If you're not with a man who's not trying to learn about you, who's not trying to like learn about your likes and dislikes, he don't like you. It's as simple as that. He doesn't want to be with you long term. He's there for selfish reasons, but a man who takes his time out to learn about you, cater to your advantages, cater to your disadvantages, who is there to try to help and build you up, is a man who wants you. So that's my advice on that. Definitely get professional advice. Someone who knows about this thing.
Like, I do not have a PhD in this. Other medical advice.
Right.
This is all just from opinionated and personal experience.
Yeah.
And we come from a loving place, but we are not the professionals.
Exactly. And to not take things personally. Right? A lot of people take disorders personally. Like, she's not yelling at you because she wants to. She's yelling at you because there's things going on in her head that she can't control. Right? So it's like, it's not about you. It's about y'all together. So make sure it's whatever effort that you put into your relationship and about learning about her, that you're doing it together. Right? Oh God, the sun just came out of nowhere. Phoenix.
At least you have sun.
Where are y'all?
So I'm in Ohio, and right now it's snowing.
Oh yeah, we just got a snowstorm too. What do you say? Where are you from too?
I'm from Ontario, Canada.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a little chilly up here.
Another thing that you need to learn about our comic is that we have about 12 artists, and they're from all over the U.S., Dubai, Canada, South America. And we all came together during the pandemic and said, hey, let's do a comic book. It started with me and my college brother, Lee, and then his brother, because they found each other after a long time of being apart. And then he came back to me, and I graduated with my business degree, and they were like, let's do a comic book. And I'm like, let's do it, because I love going to cons, I love dressing up, and I love comics. It was just something that was kind of meant to be. I also write on the side. So it was something like, okay, well, let's do this. So then as we started unfolding, everybody that's found us usually found us on Instagram or through other social means, and they just kind of joined the crazy. And so now we're just one, I call it our one dysfunctional, happy, extended family.
That's so
that
awesome.
Brings comics of all different genres and ethnicities and, artists together, and keeping that. But we want to do what Marvel and DC could not do, and that's keep the comic with the artist.
Right.
We don't like doing AI. Everybody hand draws or hand writes, hand creates, and we don't take the easy shortcuts out of it. So it may take a little longer for us to get our stuff out there, but once we do, we totally appreciate all the support and love that we have gotten back from everybody that has shown us that in the last 3 years. Yeah,
that's so awesome, man. So how do y'all two meet?
So Jess, actually, I saw her. We met on Instagram. Yeah, we met on Instagram because
we met on Instagram. There was a previous artist who found me on Instagram, and he sent me a message, and I was like, this is a scam. I'm being scammed right now. And then I just decided to, like, you know what, whatever. Why don't I just play along? Let's see where this goes. And then now here I am, like 4 years later.
That's so crazy. What can happen in 4 years?
Yeah. And then from there, we said, okay, there was only 3 girls on the team. So I was like, let's do Coffee, Chix, and Comix. Let's give comics a female voice for one, because you're always hearing if you look at Comic Storian and Comic Explain and all of those different comics, you didn't hear it coming from the female's voice or the female's opinion about things. It's always the guys that knew best about what's happening in comics. Girls never knew, right? But girls are actually the most insightful because we pay attention to the little nuances, the little details. And that's what I liked about this, because we were able to talk about that and TV shows and other just random topics. And I wanted to give it a very unconventional format. I just like no script. Whatever we get on here and talk about today, that's what we're going to talk about.
Right.
We'll do it for 45 minutes to an hour and then be done with it. And we go on about our lives.
Right.
And we may or may not have coffee, depending on the time of day. But
I got my energy drink too.
Yeah, there's always a mug involved. So
Yeah.
it was just one of those things where we just kind of got together and did that. And so this year we decided to do a little more conventional format of flipping the tables.
Okay.
And so again, we really appreciate that you decided to come on, give us some of your wisdom and light and energy into some of our relationship woes. Any dating advice you want to give Jess as a girl out here in the world doing this thing?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say one tip that I know for sure: no dating apps. No thanks. Oh boy.
Yeah.
I mean, at least up here, it's a little bit.
I'm with you. Like some people disagree. I totally agree with you. Like I'm old fashioned. If I'm not able to see you and like I feel like there's a different value in meeting someone and looking at their mannerisms, the little things, right? Like I said earlier, the little details mean the most.
Yeah.
How they react to certain things you say. Like maybe you're a quirky person and you say something that's really like, you know, quirky, and then you can see their face and see if they actually like that kind of stuff. Like you say something like, and you're laughing, and they're just like I
don't get it. I don't understand it.
Something happened.
Yeah, like I don't get it. So then now you know, like maybe you're not for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But saying that on the dating app, you don't know. There's
no anything could be funny. Anything could be funny. As soon as somebody says LOL, you're like,
you're not laughing out
okay.
loud. You're not laughing out loud. No. Yeah, no. I'm with you. Stay away from dating apps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. We met on a dating app, but it was after spending about a year and a half. We figured out that we spent a year and a half passing each other. So it was kind of fated that we ended up on a dating app together.
Wow.
And it was crazy because he actually, the way I met my guy, he actually came to one of my comic book stands.
Wow.
And I didn't even realize it.
Wow.
Until he was just like, I need to know who this girl is. And so then he found me later. And yeah, from there we met for coffee. That was the thing we did. We did the thing that everybody now calls a taboo. We went out for coffee. Like,
wow.
And
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was something, you know, that just, okay. And I've never did the whole let's meet and go for coffee kind of thing, but we did it. And then it turned out to be awesome 2 years later. So it'll be 2 years in June. Yeah.
That's awesome. And one thing I'll say, man, take your time, bro. Like, take your time. I didn't mean to call you bro. Take your time because it's wild out here. Like, people are like listening to these podcasts. And not everyone is saying healthy things. In fact, probably the most popular podcasts are like unhealthy because it has shock value, or someone says something that's like, whoa, controversial. But there's not a lot of people who are out there trying to actually help you, right? So in saying that, you have all these people watching these podcasts, and you turn on the TV and the movies are toxic. You turn on the news, that's toxic. So there's a lot of toxic-minded people out here. And it is hard to find a needle in the haystack nowadays. So it's like, take your time. Like, so that's another thing I was talking to my friend about the other day, is that like, the older I get, the more I realize time is not a real thing. Because once you make time a real thing, that's when you start to get really pressured. Like, you start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going against the clock. I'm going to die soon. Or, you know, things like that. Once you realize like time is real, you'll start to put more emphasis and importance on things that matter the most. And that's finding the right guy for you. Simple as that. Once you put a time clock on yourself, now you're just trying to find somebody. Right? Yeah. But you're not trying to find somebody who is for you. So that's my advice. Get rid of time. Time isn't real. It's not.
But also enjoy the little moments, I think. I think enjoying, like, even if it's just the coffee and you guys never talk after that, enjoy that moment because it teaches you so much. Like, and you get to learn something new from somebody else, and you may build it as part of your like I said, you may build it as part of your ideal of what you may want and your expectation of what relationship you do want. You may want to have coffee every morning with that person. Like you enjoyed that time with that person.
Right.
So,
and in meeting new people, you might learn something. Like people might expose you to something you never thought of. And like just meeting different people, like you said, maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe our relationship, maybe it doesn't like come to fruition of relationship, right? And you just meet somebody, you go out for coffee, and they might have said something to you or inspired you or gave you a testimony. And now you're just like, wow, I never looked from that perspective. Now I can, go on with my life with a new and refreshed perspective that's good for me.
mm-hmm.
So just meeting new people until you get to that right point, there's nothing wrong with that, man.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that comics did teach us, which is like one of those things that's hard to learn, is that don't get into a relationship because you're in a life or death experience.
Oh, God.
So don't get into the relationship because you feel like, okay, tomorrow's never going to come, or you find out you have cancer, or you find out that get into the relationship because that's where you both feel that you are in the place to move towards. Yeah. Because if you're just in a relationship, and I think you spoke on that at the opening, if you're in a relationship just going through the motions, eventually the shoe is going to drop. Yep. That shoe you're going to go through the relationship looking for that shoe the entire time.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things that it's really hard to do. It's really hard to date, but it's even harder when you're in that relationship and you're always looking for that other shoe.
Right. So true. So true. You guys got, what y'all gonna have to do, right? And I'm giving y'all this for free. I don't know if y'all thought about this yet. Free game right here. Y'all gotta make comic coffee. Just saying.
Comic coffee.
You gotta fulfill that first part of your name. Because I was just thinking when you were talking, I'm like, hold on. That would be cool if they made coffee branded with comics. Like, or some kind of.
Oh,
that would be so.
Hey, I'm just for free. I will not sue y'all.
All right, so for any coffee distributors out there,
get with them. Get with them.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool.
It comes with a free podcast.
Just saying. Just saying.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That is our time. Thank you so much, Sealz, for joining us on this podcast. It was very awesome. If you want to stick around after, we'll do a sum it up. Yeah. And as for you guys, we will see you on the next go round. Cheers.
See you.
Peace.